Now let's discuss the process for if you wish to configure your repository to allow you to make changes. This is a slightly more complicated process, as most of you will not have direct access to the main repository. You will, however, have read access, so you should be able to see this page, just not make changes directly. And that's by design. We have a system in place so that everything needs to be reviewed before it gets merged into the main repository that everyone else pulls from. So, to begin this, you'll need to create your own local copy you can work from. We call this copy a fork. And you'll see on the top right, there are already two forks kicking around. The other buttons here, by the way, watch or unwatch if you've already watched it, will give you email notifications when things like new versions are added or new bug reports are filed or that sort of thing. And star or unstar if you've already starred will put you down as having this repository marked as a sort of favorite, which will make it easier for you to find later and also show the other people on GitHub that you feel this repository is valuable and worth keeping an eye out for. But the button we're interested right now is the fork button. Go ahead and press the fork button. If you have a more complicated GitHub account like mine, it might ask you where to put it. Otherwise, it might just do it for you. It does ask you where to put it under your own account. And it will take a few seconds to create this fork. And now you'll see that instead of it being IveoXA Sectorfiles, it's now your username Sectorfiles, forked from IveoXA Sectorfiles. What this means is I now have my own copy that I have complete permissions over that I can mess around with as I see. So to get using this, code, copy under the HTTPS tab, go back to GitHub Desktop, and clone this repository from the internet. Paste the repository in, and I would recommend cloning it to your Aurora Sectorfiles location. That way, any changes you make, you can see loaded in Aurora and you can test out. You don't have to do that, of course. You can put it anywhere you like. But this is how I like to do it, and I can highly recommend it because it allows you to test things before submitting them. That's all done. Press clone. And wait for it to clone. This cloning process will be just as long as cloning the original repository, unfortunately, as it is a very large repository containing over 5 million lines of sector file. But once it's all done, we should be given a few options for how GitHub Desktop sets it up. For now, let's wait for it to finish downloading. I'm going to leave this in real time so that you can get a sense for about how long it should be taking. If you have a slower internet connection, it might take longer, and if you have a faster one, it might take less time. There we are, all done. Now you should see two options here unless you have this disabled. And the choice of this is up to you. Let me explain what each of the options does, and I'll start with for my own purposes. For my own purposes is useful if you do not want any changes you made to go back into the original Iveo repository. You don't want anyone else to be able to use your changes. These are just for you. You're never going to share them. That's what for my own purposes is for. However, I and the rest of the XA team would hope that you would wish to contribute your changes and your improvements to the original master repository so other people can use them. And to do that, you'll leave it on to contribute to the parent project. Now, what this means is a little bit nuanced. Any changes you make will still go to your own fork. They will not go to the master repository. However, when you are done, leaving this one checked gives you an option to file something called a pull request, which we'll discuss later, which will show the people that manage the XA repository that you have some changes that you think would help benefit the entire division. And when we see those changes, we can use those to merge it in. So I'm going to leave it as to contribute to the parent project. Contributing to the parent project, leaving that option checked, will also help you keep your copy up to date with any changes that are made on the main repository. You continue, it should set everything up for you. And if you go to the correct folder, hit Show in Explorer or the equivalent for your platform, you should see all of the sector files as well as the README and the includes. And in the includes, you should see every sector. Now we can look into how to make changes. But first, let's take a look at how you can keep your copy up to date with everyone else's changes. I recommend you do this fairly regularly. Main thing you can do is in branch, you can say merge into current branch, and you should be able to find an option there. If it doesn't show up like it hasn't here, which I've done on purpose, that means you haven't done your fetches. So you can go ahead and press this swirly button, and then you can go back to merge into current branch, and you should see one saying upstream main. And that upstream is the XA master repository. If there are any changes, instead of being a check mark, it'll show you you've got some changes, and you can press the merge button. Otherwise, it'll be grayed out like it is here, as everything's already up to date, as we've only just cloned it. Next up, let's discuss how to make changes.